My name is Mio, and thank you for inviting me here to sunny Dublin. I didn't expect that either, but it's great. Experiences from Denmark. I work in a private consultancy where we do a very broad range of projects within renewable energy. We are a small company in that respect. We're 30 people, architects, landscape planners, and engineers, biologists, and technical people. I myself is an architect. I'm a head of the department where we do the municipal planning, and my experience is 8 years containing roughly 60 bigger wind turbine projects in Denmark. This is my agenda. First, a very, very brief introduction to wind energy in Denmark. Some thoughts about community engagement policies, what's in place until now, and then a case, a project in Western Jutland, and then maybe some opening lines for what could be discussion for the rest of the day, from my point of view. This is Denmark, at least Visit Denmark's proposal to this is the official branding of Denmark. It's a lot about wind energy, and I agree. This is also Denmark. This is the media perception. This is more and more what we see in the newspapers about wind energy. This is just 3 different projects and angry protesters saying that this will destroy everything that we love about our local community. And this is recent or successful wind turbine projects in Denmark. All 3 actually with a high rate of community involvement and successful, completed within very few years actually. So it is possible, even though there's a very, very big challenge, and the challenge is, of course, the media loves the bad stories and everything that goes wrong. And the political system is not more stable than what the sort of the media focuses on. That may be where you vote when you vote. So, wind energy in Denmark. I think we are labeled as a pioneer in developing wind power, and has installed wind turbines onshore since the 70s. And of course, today it's more than 40. It's actually around 50% of Denmark's energy supply comes from wind power. And the plan for 2050 that Denmark should be 100% free of fossil fuels is, of course, very dependent on wind energy. And the export is also a very, very big part of our identity. The policies and practical measures in place today, I mean, this is a typical sort of timeline for a process, municipal planning process. The projects in Denmark are carried out in the municipal level. It starts with the developer applies for the project to go through in the municipality. And then there's a public consultation where you inform about the process, invite the citizens, and they can be able to feed in with their ideas about the planning process. And then we draft the papers, the environmental assessment, the local planning documents. They are again exposed to the public in a public hearing of 8 weeks, and that in the middle of this 8 weeks hearing, there's a public presentation again where you have politicians presenting, the developer presenting, and the technical staff presenting what are ups and downs for this project. And then if it succeeds, you get a vote up or a vote down in the local political municipal council. And then, of course, the construction can begin and commissioning of the project. This, I mean, on paper, this takes 12 months, and actually it sometimes succeeds. And then again, I mean, during the 8 years I've been working, I still have projects that are not finished with this. I mean, it's a very, very difficult process. But I mean, it still is possible to do in 12 months, and that says a lot. I mean, if you do it in a proper way, if you inform all the stakeholders, and especially if you engage in the local community, it's actually possible to go from the idea that is handed into the municipality until you get the final vote in 12 months, even though there's a heavy focus on having these public hearings and the political debates in between, which is in itself is like half of the time is just formal exercises. The rest is communicating in between. To support this, or to support the development of wind projects in Denmark, there are 4 schemes promoting the local acceptance and involvement. And I says it's from 2009 until 2018, because we're actually going now into a different system. I mean, this was so far what worked, and I would rather tell about that instead of what will come. I can say what will be different, but not how it works. So the first of these schemes is the Guarantee Fund, and it's made to support financing of the preliminary investigation. It means the environmental assessment and all the consultancy that we actually do. It costs a lot of money, and for smaller community-driven projects, it's almost impossible just to go out and say, okay, go on. So even though it's not a very successful scheme, it is there. I mean, you can get sort of a loan for, 500,000 kroners, and then you can sort of make your investigation. If the project is not successful, you can get reimbursed, and you maybe will not suffer that much. It starts in the beginning when you apply for the planning procedure, and then it goes until the point where you get either the finger up or down for the projects, and then the project can be involved. It's not a very used scheme, and it's not very successful, but it's one of the 4 official schemes. Then there's the local citizens' option to purchase shares in the project, and it's a rather successful, or used to be a rather successful scheme. It allows the local citizens to buy minimum 20% or 20% of the wind turbine project at cost price. It means it has to be the same price as the developer who runs the project. There's initial official information about this when the public consultation goes out. You have to write about this so that the local citizens are informed about this. And then again at the public hearing, 8-week hearing, there's a meeting we also have to inform about this so that everybody's informed at the right level. And then after commissioning, or when the turbines are built, of course, everybody is in the project. Then there's the compensation for loss of value to neighboring real estate because of the impact you may suffer, noise, visual impact, etc. It's not very a successful scheme, but it's there, and you can maybe discuss if it's actually heightened the acceptance of turbines. Probably not, because it's a negative scheme in that way that you expect that you get some kind of negative impact on your real estate, so you get compensation. But it is there, and it's working every time. So again, you have an obligation to inform it about these public hearings during the planning process, and after the wind turbines are commissioned, you get the money that your real estate may suffer, and the project owner compensates you, so they have to take up money from the pockets. And then there's the last one, which is the green scheme to enhance local scenic and recreational values, it's called. And it's maybe a sort of a broader definition in that way, that it's not necessarily only for the people surrounded the turbines. It's within the municipal. So it can actually be very far distance from where the turbines are. It's a municipality who sort of have the final go and say which ideas should be supported. But the idea is that the local communities can present ideas to the municipal, and then the municipal can evaluate which ones are best to pursue. And each megawatt that is installed generates roughly 11,000 euros. So if you add that up, you get some money to actually start an idea. Again, there's an obligation to inform about this at the public hearings, and you can really just get started when the turbines are there. I mean, so it's difficult to make promises before anything is actually there, because then maybe expectations are too high, and then suddenly when the turbines are not installed and the political system maybe voted them down, you have a lot of angry citizens who trusted about this idea. So you can inform about it, but you can really just do something about it when the turbines are there. And then, I mean, this is the official part of the schemes, and these are some, it's not unofficial, but it's something that we see local developers or consortiums sort of take up as actions. And I mean, the best of them start long before the official planning process starts in the project idea, and the project idea can maybe originate years before, half a year before. It's different, of course. And they are maybe to compare a little bit like the green scheme in that way, that they sort of benefit the nearest townships, the communities who are actually there, the enthusiasts that live in the area, and they identify them and sort of make them part of the idea from the beginning and say that, okay, if this succeeds, then we can donate some money to you, and you can actually evolve projects from this. So it's a long time before the actual planning process, and sort of the real work, of course, can first be seen after post-construction, when the turbines are there and you can sponsor the money. And then there's another one, also maybe focused on the negative side, but it's a little bit different than what the official scheme says about compensating negative impact on your real estate. But it's seen in a couple of projects, and I think it's actually successful, that the developer makes a time-limited offer to buy the neighboring houses under that kind of agreement that if you live there for, let's say, a year and you really don't like the turbines, okay, then we can buy your house. But if you like them, or you just get settled and stay in the place. But we sort of, you add maybe 10%, or you add some extra to the fixed price, so that you say, okay, let's see what happens, and maybe you can gain some trust to the turbines. I mean, it's a possibility to sort of downplay the negative thing, but at the same time acknowledge that some people really don't want to live close to turbines. And the case, where I think all of these things work together in a sort of interesting way. It's a project called Nørhed Jordsmose. It's in the western part of Jutland. It's 22 turbines of combined 72 megawatt. The turbines are 150 meters high, and at that time in 2014, when it was operated or opened, it was the largest onshore park in Denmark. The initiator of this project was a consortium consisting of local landowners and turbine owners. So there were 8 of them going together and say, okay, we want to do this, and we want to do it as a sort of a local project, but we also, of course, want to make some money of the land that we have and the turbines that we want to repower. But I mean, the whole idea was that they knew that if this had to succeed for themselves, but also for the neighborhood, it had to be something that was a win-win situation for everybody around the townships closest to. So, I mean, I say that the basic DNA was sort of community engagement. This is a project. We did the planning for it, so we know how long it took from the day we started until the turbines were there, and it took 2 years, which is pretty well done compared to the size. And the conflicts that could be involved in this kind of project. The idea before that was, of course, not part of the 2 years, but from the official application was handed in until the turbines started producing electricity 2 years. So this is just a map sort of illustrating what is in place. There's 2 townships, one called No, 1.3 is not no. They actually wanted this, so it should be yes, but in Danish it's no. 1.3 kilometers from the nearest new wind turbine, which is the white dots. And the other township is 2.4 kilometers. It's called Ølstrup, and it's in the other side. Then on this you have the 6 existing turbines, which were taken down, smaller old turbines. Then we have within the dotted line, which is closest to the turbines, which is 600 meters from the turbines, you have the area where you cannot have any housing. So that's the 4 times total height that we have in Denmark as a limit. Within that area, you had to buy off 12 houses to make space. And in the sort of near zone to the project, which is from 600 meters out to 1,000 meters from the turbines, we have 30 neighbors. We consider them to be the sort of the crucial neighbors. They're the ones who suffer the most, but also the ones that we have to investigate for noise and flicker, of course, to see if we can make the project. These are the schemes, the official schemes, and what they did. The green scheme generated 850,000 euros to be used in the community projects that, of course, the municipality had some hand in, but anyway, they're there, the money. I mean, and then the share option scheme made it possible to sell 44,000 shares in the local community, which is actually 4.4 turbines of the total project. And I think if it was possible, there are actually a lot of more shares that could be sold because the demand was, or the willingness in the neighborhood was really high to buy. And then the scheme for compensation for loss of value, of course, was also in place. These are some of the local developer actions that were sort of added to the mix. The negative first, maybe, or the one that is thought of negative when you think about people wanting to move away. There were 30 neighbors within this zone of 600 to 1,000 meters who were offered this deal that if they didn't like what they saw after the wind turbines were there, they could sort of say, okay, we want to sell our house, and we've already made an evaluation with real estate salespeople who evaluated the price. So if you add 10% extra to that, then you can also finance the moving of your house and stuff like that. It hasn't really been in high demand afterwards. So I mean, it's just something that gives security in the whole planning process. And the other one is that the consortium, sort of on top of the green scheme, but on their own terms, made an agreement that every turbine generates money to the local townships nearby, and it says that every 2 times 30,000 euros per year for the rest of the time that the turbines are there. So they go into the community pockets where they have a board in each township where they find out what do we want to do with this money, how do we want to initiate new projects. And maybe they cannot pay for everything. I mean, they have a school that is converted into a culture house, they have a visiting center, they have different church activities, a lot of projects. Not all of them can be funded totally by the money, but it's a lot easier to go and get more money if you say, okay, I have half, and that's what they have right now. So I mean, it's a really crucial way to ignite money into the neighborhood. And then maybe the most sort of fun or successful idea, which is not something you can actually put into a scheme, but you need creativity and you need people knowing the local community and thinking ahead. When you construct this, which is a big turbine project, you need a lot of sand, of course. In the town of Ølstrup, there was an old plan of maybe we could have a lake. How could we how could we go about this? So I mean, these two things combined suddenly made it possible that you could take a lot of soil from Ølstrup, and then you could bring it into the wind turbine area. You would probably take that sand somewhere else, drive a lot more kilometers, spend a lot more fuel. This way you had local contractors, and I mean the whole thing is just a win-win situation. This is a zoom in on the lake, situated just outside the city. There was later actually made a local plan for the whole area, so there was not only just a lake, it actually also have a possibility to expand the town, giving sort of permission to near lakeside dwellings. I mean, which is also a fantastic situation. Then you have a small sand beach and a bridge. So I mean, quite successful product of wind turbine construction. This is 2 weeks ago. I mean, this is a local triathlon, mini triathlon, I think. They run towards the lake, and this is the lake where you have the kilometers that you have to swing in circles. I mean, this is just one point of view, but I think it's interesting to see what happens when local forces join very early on and actually have a very important part in developing the projects. And this is a wind turbine project seen from above. Next practice, I don't know if it is next practice, but I see a tendency which is making things a little bit more difficult, to be honest, like everywhere else. Fake news is also penetrating wind turbine planning. We see a lot more opposition coming from what goes on in Facebook, social media. I mean, even though that the planning process is really open in Denmark, it's really structured. There's a lot of public hearings and places where you can share fact-based knowledge. It's a small group in Facebook who runs the whole thing of people being opposed to the project. And before the political sort of vote is there, that is actually the whole solution is already in what the group in Facebook has said about the project. So I mean, it's a little bit difficult actually to have this official planning process, and then you have some satellite communication going on that you cannot really interfere in, because there's so much fake news in that, what goes on there. So what to do? I mean, this is one thing. Enhance fact-based and proactive communication. That is one thing you can do, and target the media, target the people involved in this, offer more knowledge about what's up and what's down. Provide a transparent and embracing framework for public participation in the decision-making process. Identify local ambassadors, and I think that's what shows in the Nørhede project. I mean, if you didn't have local ambassadors in that project, if you didn't have community enthusiasts, then you wouldn't have succeeded. And you have to do it, I say day one, but actually before day one, because when is day one? Is that when you hand in the application, then it's too late. So I mean, you really have to be part of the DNA, like I said. Yeah, that's my word.